For a lot of people, the American dream feels like it's shrinking. And in a place like Utah, the dream of owning a home is becoming a real nightmare for so many. But Utah is fighting back, and they're doing it with a bold, maybe even radical idea. They're trying to bring back the starter home. Let's get into it.
It's a question a lot of us are asking, right? I mean, just look at Utah. The median home price there has skyrocketed. We're talking over 50% in just 5 years. So that dream of owning a home, for many, it feels like it's just slipping through their fingers. And Utah is feeling this pinch more than most, so they're trying to do something, anything, about it.
Okay, let's put a number on this problem, and it is a big one. 2 million. That's how many more people are expected to call Utah home in the next 40 years. To give you some perspective, that's like taking the entire city of Houston, Texas, and dropping it into a state that's already feeling pretty crowded. You can just imagine the pressure that puts on a housing market that's already stretched to its limit.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll dig into Utah's housing squeeze. Then we'll check out their big idea, the starter home solution. After that, we'll look at the actual laws they're passing, see what we can learn from other states that have tried this, and finally, we'll ask the big question. Is any of this actually going to be enough?
All right, first up, let's really set the stage here. You ever think about what happens when a state's success kind of becomes its own worst enemy? Well, that's pretty much the story of Utah. It's one of the fastest growing states in the entire country, but that success has come with a huge price tag for anyone trying to buy a home.
Now, what's so telling about this chart is the story it tells. On one side, yeah, you've got incredible growth, more people, more jobs, awesome. But then you look at those other bars. As prices have shot up, the rate of homeownership has just tanked. It's at its lowest point in decades. And what that really means is that for countless families, that dream of putting down roots of building a future in their own community, well, it's just becoming a dream.
So what's the game plan? Well, state leaders are actually looking to the past to try and solve a very modern crisis. They're trying to bring back the starter home. That concept that used to be the absolute bedrock of the American dream.
And get this, they've put a huge number on it. Governor Spencer Cox has set this super specific, super ambitious goal: build 35,000 new starter homes by the end of 2028. That's almost 10,000 new homes a year. That's a pace of construction Utah hasn't seen in decades. So this isn't just some vague idea, it's a very real target.
So what exactly do we mean by a starter home here? Well, think of it like this. Imagine land is a really expensive cake. Instead of having to buy a huge slice you can't afford, the state is trying to make it legal to sell smaller, more affordable slices. The key is reducing the minimum lot size, which makes that first step into homeownership just a little more possible.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does an idea like this become an actual policy? How do you convince builders to build these things? And maybe more importantly, how do you get powerful cities to actually approve them? It's kind of a David versus Goliath story, and the state is betting on a pretty clever slingshot.
The absolute centerpiece of this whole strategy is a bill called House Bill 184. This is basically the state government stepping in and changing the local rulebook for how housing gets built.
And this is where things get really interesting. This is how they plan to cut through all that red tape. It's like they're putting the cities on a shot clock. A builder applies for a permit to build on a smaller lot, and the city has exactly 30 days to make a call. If that buzzer goes off and they haven't responded, bam, it's an automatic green light. The project is approved. It's designed to stop local governments from just stalling these projects forever.
And you gotta know, this isn't some shot in the dark. This new bill is actually built on a whole foundation of reforms from the year before. It shows that Utah is really in this for the long haul. They're not just trying to put a Band-Aid on the problem, they're trying to perform some pretty major surgery on their entire housing market.
But, and this is a big but, this kind of reform is a huge gamble. For every state that tries this and wins big, there's another one that just flames out. So let's look at some of these cautionary tales and see what lessons Utah might be able to learn from the states that have already walked this path.
This slide really lays out the national landscape, doesn't it? For every success story, like what happened in Texas or Maine, there's a story like Arizona. Their version, the Starter Homes Act, failed 2 years in a row. Not because it was a bad idea, but because of this fierce political war with local cities who just saw it as a massive overreach by the state.
And that brings us to this quote, which just perfectly sums up the political reality of all this. What seems like a simple, common-sense change to zoning rules can just explode into what they call a bruising housing fracas. I mean, that's a great phrase. This isn't just some friendly policy debate, it's an all-out political war.
So, okay, let's say they can pull it off. They win the political fight. That brings us to the real million-dollar question, the potential weak spot in Utah's whole plan.
Is changing just one rule, the minimum lot size, is that really enough to win the war on housing affordability?
And here's where we get a dose of reality from Patrick Risk. He's the land broker right there in Salt Lake City, so he's in the trenches. He's off for the goal, but he's warning against this trap of just focusing on the number of new houses on a spreadsheet instead of the number of actual families who can afford to buy one.
And this is why. As you can see here, the lot size is just one piece of a very, very expensive puzzle. You still have the insane cost of buying the land itself. You have these things called impact fees that cities charge developers. Then there's financing costs, building roads, sewers. It all adds up. And just changing one piece of that puzzle doesn't magically solve the whole thing.
So at the end of the day, the biggest risk here is that Utah could end up with a bill that looks like a huge victory on paper, but in the real world, it's a defeat. A law that gets great headlines but doesn't actually help a single family get the keys to their first home.
And that really leaves us with this final thought. Utah is betting the house, you could say, on this idea that a few changes to the law can rebuild the American dream. But with so many powerful forces pushing back, the question isn't just whether they can win, but whether they can truly afford to lose. The future for a whole generation of homebuyers really does hang in the balance.